like, how did your surroundings reacted to that? That you just quit your job and say, I'm gonna travel and just...
Yeah, also part of their surroundings was super important, so I changed my surroundings. I had to, because I don't feel I would have been strong enough if I stayed in London to say that I'm quitting my career and then, you know, stop working and then change, because I had all my friends around and my family and all that type of stuff. Not family in Ireland, but for me, the environmental change was really important because I didn't have all the old patterns of, you know, you are an engineer, you work in construction, these are the things that you do. I needed to get away from that in order to try something different. I think when a lot of people are trying to get leads, like say, I've worked with a few website designers in the past as an example. They're like, I'll build you a new website. And then you just get no responses. But what happens is people is like, well, I don't need a website. Because no business owner wakes up at 3 in the morning thinking, oh, I wish I need a new website. Like, it never happens. So rather than selling websites, they need to sell the thing that comes with the website. So better brand equity, higher conversions, more high quality clients who come online and see you as way better than all the bad looking performers in the market. So no matter what you're selling, like, cold outreach works really well if you're just able to clearly deliver the message in a way that the person will understand, okay, yeah, that's actually the thing that I need now.
Sell the outcome.
Sell the outcome, but also sell it in a way that they understand it.
Colin went from having a 9-to-5 to taking the leap of faith into entrepreneurship. From that point on, failed horribly, went broke, and needed to live at his parents' with his wife. Then, again, took the leap of faith to now have a thriving business with the right systems in place. And not just a business, a LinkedIn consultancy business. So in this podcast, you will learn a couple of really valuable things. You learn how to talk to your leads or how to get them just in general, and how to put the right systems in place. And don't forget how to push through, because being 30 years old at your parents' house, it's not a fun place to be in.
It was really fun. What do you mean?
So I would say let's dive into it.
Thanks for having me on, man. Really appreciate it.
Of course. You finished college in 2014, right?
Yeah, 2014. Civil engineer. So, like, yeah, we've gone a long way away from that now. But I was a civil engineer. Always taught like an engineer. Got a job as an engineer in London. Worked there for like 3.5 years until 2017. But
because you're from Ireland, right?
I'm Irish, yeah. So I left home to get the job. So yeah, I was in college in Ireland, then left home to get the job in London. First time living away from home. Again, lots of fun, I'm sure.
Especially in London?
Yeah, lots of not fun stuff as well. You actually have to fend for yourself. So I did that for 3 years, but then I remember one day I asked myself, I was like, can I do this for 40 years? And I was like, absolutely no chance in hell. I just cannot do it. So myself and my now wife Gina, she was kind of getting to a similar point. She was a pharmacist at the time, kind of getting to a similar point, and we just said, right, we're just going to save up some money and go traveling. So we stopped living life the way we were, as in kind of partying on the weekends and stuff, which I wasn't getting any enjoyment out of. And saved up for 6 months, and then in the middle of 2017 we both quit. Like, it was planned. Both our bosses knew we were going to quit. Both quit and just went traveling. No specific plan in place, but it was just going to have to be something better than what came before, because again, that for me, that was a dead end. I couldn't see myself doing that. And yeah, that's kind of how that's how the entrepreneurial journey started.
And then you start with the most basic thing that every entrepreneur has his face in, the shiny objects.
Yeah, of course. So yeah,
you started with crypto.
Started with crypto.
Well, first you had some an obsession with pallets.
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas, and then I didn't know what I was doing at all. And when you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. But I had loads of ideas on what to do, and I was still thinking in the construction mindset, like building stuff. So I got really into making pallet furniture. So couches made of pallets, and you could sell them because people sell them for a lot of money actually. I was like, right, that makes sense because I'm construction. But then I eventually realized that that was a bad idea. And,
How did you realize that?
just because I couldn't fit, like, where was I going to get the materials? I was traveling at the time, so where am I going to build these couches? My hands are like insanely soft, first of all, so I'm not a good carpenter. So like, it just didn't make sense. I realized that relatively quickly, even with someone with no experience. But I was like super eager to do something so I could earn some money. I'd saved up like probably about 12 months runway. Because the engineering thing was well paid for someone of my age at the time. I think it was 25, 26. But I was like really eager because I had left the work, and I was like, I have to vindicate my decision. I realize this now. I didn't think this actively at the time, but it was like, I have to find someone that can make money for me, because I'm after going against my mother and quitting my job that I went to college for, and being like, right, I have to make some money now, because that's the simplest way. Even though I'm not a big, business growth money person, it was like, I have to make money to live on, to say that this was a good decision. So stopped the pallet thing, went into crypto, because it was 20s.
How was that though? Like, how did your surroundings reacted to that? You just quit your job and say, I'm gonna travel and just...
Yeah, so part of their surroundings was super important. So I changed my surroundings. I had to, because I don't feel I would have been strong enough if I stayed in London to say that I'm quitting my career and then, stop working and then change, because I had all my friends around and my family and all that type of stuff. My family in Ireland. But for me, the environmental change was really important, because I didn't have all the old patterns of, you are an engineer, you work in construction, these are the things that you do. I needed to get away from that in order to try something different. You know what I mean? Because I don't feel like I had the strength actually to do it in London at the time, because I would have been hanging around with all the same people who were like really nice people. There was nothing wrong with them, but it was all me. I needed a fresh break to do something new.
And I personally experienced that as well when I went to Lisbon. It was a real big change in my surroundings, and that's where the whole idea to start my own company with Craft Consulting came up. When I was there, and now even in Canggu, in Bali, it's your surroundings change in a way, and the people you meet are just so rapidly different. That's way easier to maneuver yourself into certain patterns that align better with your goals.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get that.
Yeah.
And then you went into crypto. After the pallets.
Yes, after the pallets, crypto. So it was 2017. So that was when like the second big run of Bitcoin was. So I had a bit of money saved in my runway. I dug up the runway and started using it. I think I was trading like maybe 20k or something like that. I'm not sure. Like, it wasn't enough to make a living off, but it would have been enough for me to cut my teeth and learn. So I started like just going crazy crypto trading. I don't mean with trades at the start, but like learning. I was like joined a few communities. Was treated it like a job. I went in at 9 until 6 every day into co-working. I was traveling around the place. Bali was one of the places we were in. But I just studied and studied and studied. I really enjoyed the studying part, but I was really bad at the actual trading part, which is obviously the key part of the job. In hindsight, I learned so much about myself during that time and skills and everything like that. But like the really one that sticks out in my mind is I learned that I have to cut my losses as soon as possible, or it ends up costing me. And then I'll explain on that a bit more. But I had a trade. I'm not sure if the viewers are how familiar they are with trading, but I had a trade and I had a loss amount set where I can only lose like $500 or whatever it was. But the market was coming down, and then I was like, oh, I'll just move it down because it's going to go back up. I was like, oh, okay, I'll move down a bit more, it's going to go back up. And then I kept doing that, and then it came down where I was 10k down, and it was my birthday, and the trade had been running for 3 weeks, and I was like getting margin calls. I was like, I have to liquidate this now. So lost 10k on my birthday when I was a crypto trader. So that was when I was doing crypto trading. So that was a real very harsh lesson, and that was needed to definitely learn how to better cut my losses, because that was cost me a lot of money that time.
And then you went into Forex?
Yeah, so I put all this time into into trading, learning how to do it. But like the reasoning I gave myself that it wasn't I wasn't me, it was them. It was the crypto market was too volatile, and if I got a less volatile market, I'd be able to deal with that, which is Forex. So around this time then, it kind of came to the end of our year traveling, and I moved to, me and Gina went to Australia, and I just met a prop trader who had a trading course. I said I'll work with him for free and help him do some marketing and sales in return for him teaching me how to trade. So did that for a few months. Turns out it was actually me that was still just a bad trader at Forex. It didn't, but I had fun. I enjoyed it that period of time. There was another guy in there called Greg, and he was doing Facebook ads, and I was kind of doing more sales calls and dealing with clients and stuff. We got talking. He's a bit younger than me, and we got talking, and I said, "Hey, we should start selling containers to people." He was like,
well, then I'm curious though to dive into that part a bit.
Yeah.
You did sales, and that's where you also learned about the performance-based structure, right?
Yeah. So I was working with Richard on when we make a sale, we get paid a bit of money. So it was kind of like you get what you eat what you kill, basically, type thing. So I didn't have anything that I could come to the table with, where to demand a wage of him, but I wanted to do the thing. So I was like, okay, I'll only get paid from what I bring in for you. And he was like, okay, fair enough. And then I'll teach you on the side. So that came up again later on as well, which ended up being a good.
Yeah. So what did you learn from that?
I learned from that it really helped me get started. It took down the barrier to getting started. I think there's so many people when they want to do something and get started, like I talk to so many people, it's like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. But what they don't realize is that they can actually just start doing it now. And you don't have to get paid 100 grand a year to start doing something. You should get paid 100 grand when you've been doing it for a period of time and you're good at it and you're able to get results and bring value to the table. But with this fella, he had information that I wanted. I wanted to learn how to trade. I had what he wanted, which was time and bodies to help him sell his thing. So it was a good deal. And then if I bring deals on the back end, I get paid and everyone's happy. It didn't work out monetarily brilliant, but what it taught me was that if I put down the barrier, in this case, as in like put down my ego as well, as in like if I just start this and prove my worth, I will get paid, and then I can go and demand more down the track. And I ended up doing that as in social media as well. But I think if a lot of people when they're trying to get into something new, just do it, like literally just do it, and don't tie your worth to as in like, oh, I should be getting paid X amount of $250 an hour for this. It's like you don't have that clout to say that on day one. You may have it in the future, but you have to get there. You know what I mean? So
you need to work your way up to there.
You have to work there. So, and the only barrier is yourself. So if you just go at it, do it, then it'll open a lot of doors for you.
And then the first business idea came to life.
Yeah.
From Forex, from crypto to Forex to like an actual business that you started.
Yes.
With the partner Greg?
Greg, yeah. So see, I was still kind of I'm a construction person at that point. Because again, that's what I did in university. So when I got chatting to Greg, sound lad, and I said to him one day, I was like, hey, because I was still looking up stuff online, and this is kind of where the pallet stuff tied back into it. This was all like Pinterest and Instagram, but there was a lot of people posting about pallets, but they're also posting about containers, where you buy an old container and do it up and stuff. And I was like to Greg, there's people selling these for like 60, 70,000. And I was like, we should do that. Seems easy. So he was like, okay. So he was good at Facebook ads. So he literally spun up some Facebook ads. This is when we were still working with the prop trading guy. Spun up some Facebook ads, which he was very good at. I was like, okay, I'll take the calls, you do the ads. We need to find someone who can sell them. So we called this guy in Queensland who was an 18-hour train away from where we are, but that seemingly wasn't a problem at the time. It was a massive problem, but I was just so desperate to just get something going, you know what I mean? And I was ignoring all the reasons why I couldn't do that. And that's where I was at the time, because I was just trying to make something work that I would get paid for that would mean I wouldn't have to go back to construction. And so, I was doing the trading, I was doing the Forex, crypto.
Doing everything at the same
Everything
time.
that I could do to make sure that I definitely didn't have to go back to the worst case scenario, which was
What did your wife do at that moment? Because you were all together the whole time, right?
Yeah, she kind of went through a similar thing. So she was in as a pharmacist. That was her career. And then when we went traveling, we obviously took that time off. But then she started to get into more. She did some yoga teacher training. She ended up teaching some yoga. She worked for a couple of luxury retail brands. Now she's since gone back to do psychology. And she actually works with me full time at the moment. So she did a psychology master's, and she's about to release a paper, which is exciting as well. So similar journey. Like, you probably get her on the podcast as well. Be a good person. But yeah, similar journey, just different kind of steps towards the outcome. You know.
So you were both just struggling to keep your head afloat while still being away. Well, both trying to make it work.
Yeah, she had a job, so she had the retail job kind of keeping her going, and then she was trying to figure out what she wanted to do as a career on the side, and she knew she'd probably go back to academia, which she ended up doing. So yeah, the two of us were just kind of floating along. There was definitely a lot of times where we were like, what are we at here? Like, not making any progress. And then also, you know, you look at your friends, or we go home at Christmas, they're like having babies, buying houses, and all getting married. That's the three that you hear when you're around 30, late 20s. So like there'd be loads of times where it was like, oh, you know, what are we at? But then there'd be loads of times where our friends would be like, geez, I wish I was doing what you were doing. You know what I mean? And then it's although it's hard to get, sometimes when you're in it, you're like, oh, I wish the grass is always greener, you know?
Yeah.
But when as I've got kind of older, I've started to realize that I'm choosing all the path that I'm on, and no path is perfect. But as long as I'm doing the best to stay on the path that I want to the most, I'm going to get the most out of it over the longer term. And it might look completely different to what everyone else is doing, and that's fine because it's my choice. But if I go on their path, I know I'll be unhappy, even though that's what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But that. I say that now rationally, but then there's some days I'm like, what am I at?
I think everyone who has an entrepreneurial journey on itself, or everyone who has like some kind of ambition and actually pursues on it, or actually takes action on it, like I think I had like 2 mental breakdowns in the past couple of weeks because of everything that's going on, and it's like, and you just think like, why can't I just get a normal job, or like, fuck, what the fuck am I doing? Like,
I wouldn't think that.
But no, like, fuck no, I will never go back to a normal job. But it's like, you know, you always have that thing in your mind. It seems so perfect on the outside, but on the inside, sometimes it's quite harsh, and I think people really underestimate that, though.
For sure. But it's cycles as well, and it's different variations of the same thing. So back then it was like, you know, I was like, what am I doing? I'm trying to be a crypto trader here, but I'm supposed to be an engineer. But then now recently it's been like, oh, you've changed your business model. What am I doing? Why didn't you just stick to the old one? You know what I mean? So there's always it's the same monster on your shoulder. They just take different forms over time, and hopefully they get a bit less loud and you're able to deal with them a bit better.
And it always comes in seasons. Like sometimes you have like a bit of progress and it's like you fucking rule the world, and then things smack down and you're just like, can I go back? Fuck.
Well, I'm going through a season now. Like we'll get onto it a bit later, but like,
yeah,
I'm going through the whole season now. Like.
So how was that, to go back to the story? Like how was that with the container business? Because then you started that with your partner. You started selling some.
Yeah. So basically the idea was, and it sounds great. Everyone's going to be like, that's good. I'm going to look this up. So basically, for people who wanted to extend their house in Australia, we'll say, okay, it's okay. You don't have to make your house a construction site for 6 months. Just buy one of our containers. We'll get a crane, drop it in, hook it up, boom. You have a bigger house. One day, pay us X amount. Good to go. Sounds brilliant. Loads of interest. And especially because Craig was good at Facebook ads. Got loads of interest, got loads of leads. But we just could not actually fulfill that at all. And, you know, we entered with such naivety, as in the sense of, oh yeah, they're in Queensland, you can just get the container on the train, bring it down, and then we'll get someone to pick it up and drop it in the house, like a pack of eggs, like. But like, you know, the amount of steps involved in that obviously are so complex, and you have to pay so many people, and you have to rely on them and get suppliers. It just didn't work. So we tried our best, and we entered. We didn't royally mess anyone up, because I made sure that we didn't. But there was people who were not happy with the experience that they had.
So in the end, you delivered, but it was...
We delivered badly, we'll say. And we tried to... There was somewhere it was containers, there was somewhere we were doing planning for them. But even with planning permission and stuff like that, that's a minefield in itself. And you think, oh yeah, it's fine, it's just paperwork, we'll sign it. But then there's delays, and I remember this one lady, I'm not going to say her name, but like she was having a baby when we agreed to do the container with them. And I was like, I was so invested I entered that with the best intentions and all the energy I could, but we just could not get it done on time for when they needed to move the baby in. And it ended up being like 6 or 7 months late. And so then they had to completely change their plans for when their baby was born. They were supposed to move into the house because their house got bigger. And I remember they spent so much time on the phone to her, and she was crying, and I felt so bad. But there wasn't anything that I could do, because I just had got myself into a hole that I couldn't fix. And that was a really, really hard lesson to learn, because you're really letting people down, like big time. And I learned a lot from that. And it's a lot is serving me now. I try not to jump on into, like, say now we have a service business, I try not to take on 10 clients at one time, because I know 4 of them won't be happy for whatever reason. So I learned a lot during that time, and there's stuff that I entered with really good intentions, but I massively let people down. And that was it was a big learner for me.
How did you deal with that back then?
How did I deal with it? You could, the thing that I'll say is that I was always doing my best. At that time, it was nowhere near good enough. And I had a lot of inexperience that I brought to that table. And that was what caused the disconnect between what the promise was and what the person got. Sometimes doing your best is not good enough, because there was no way out of it. I couldn't fix it, because it was a logistic thing. It was like, the planning has been rejected now, you can't just work harder and get it done. So how did I deal with it? It was just try not to make the same mistakes again, basically. That's all you can do. I felt so bad. I did everything I could to make it better, and hopefully I made it better to some degree, but at the end of the day, I had to face the fact that I let those people down. It was my fault. I need to not do that again.
I think that's a really good lesson on taking responsibility in general. So at that point, you did $500,000, was not profitable, you let a lot of people down, you cut the ties.
Yeah, so we were like, we need to stop with this business because we can't get the containers from Queensland.
What an interesting perspective.
Yeah. So, but we were doing a lot of things right, and we rolled it. So we rolled the best parts into another business, which was a construction broker, because I was still in the construction mindset. So it was like, we were good at marketing, we were good at getting leads, we were good at talking to the leads. We just couldn't do any delivery. So we had to find a business where we didn't have to do any delivery. So, or at least delivery that we could easily manage. And I'm obviously civil engineer, so what we said, we were going to be a construction broker. So if someone wants to build a house, we'll look at the plans, put together a pricing for them, go out and tender it to some builders, and then we'll take a cut. I was in partnership with Greg and another guy, Mario, 2 really good guys. We did that, it went better, but
in between you went back to Ireland, right?
Yeah, I went back for a period of time. It was slightly before the second business started. It was before COVID. Just went back for 6 months because it was having ongoing visa issues throughout this time. I was trying to get work and holiday visa and sponsorship and all that sort of stuff to deal with. But that's not really an excuse either. It was just.
And then at one point you went back, and in the back of your head you told me that you actually know it was not a good idea.
Yeah, so
to go there.
This was before we kind of gave up on the container thing. So this is when that was still a good idea. So my first visa ran out because I entered with the working holiday thing, and in Australia, if you want to extend it, you have to go to a farm, which I didn't want to do. It was a soft hand. And went home, and then I was at home, and I was like, right, I have an opportunity over there in Australia to start to continue this business with Greg, and it seems like a good opportunity. So I was like, even though I knew it was a bad idea because I didn't have a solid visa situation, or I didn't have really anything in hindsight bar it being a good idea, I went because I couldn't go back to construction. So I ignored all the red flags about that situation and was like, I need to go and give this my absolute best shot to actually make it.
What advice would you give to someone in such a situation where they really don't want to go back into a certain point, but also have like a lot of red flags around them without them knowing it, because they just don't want something that bad?
In that case, the wrong decision ended up being the right decision. So the wrong decision was going back, but eventually it turned out to be the right decision. Because if I didn't go back and I stayed in London or Ireland or wherever we were, the chances of me being in construction were considerably higher, because I would have had opportunity to do with that, and I had network to do with that. Whereas if I went to Australia, it was a bad decision because I ended up in a terrible business situation because of the Queensland thing and the clients. But eventually that led me on to the next step, and then that led me on to the next step, and then that led me on to the next step.
So actually, if you are in such a situation, you would say just push through, because the lessons you'll learn from that will bring you on further along in your journey.
Yeah, if it's a thing where you have a thing behind you and you're trying to get away from it, you just have to keep moving forward. And I don't mean take crazy risks like with money, like take up big mortgages and, you know, buy big properties and invest. Like, I always did things where the capital investment was zero, so my risk was my time, but I was younger, so that was okay. Keep in line the risk that you're taking going forward, but you have to keep moving forward, or you'll get sucked back into the thing. That's the way I felt anyway at the time. I was like, I have to keep moving forward, even though this mightn't be, I didn't even think it mightn't be the right decision because I had the blinkers on. I was like, this is the only option, because it's not a bad decision at this time because the business didn't go well. The business was going okay at that time. In hindsight, it was a bad decision. But at the time, I was like, I just have to keep going here, because otherwise I'm going to end up back there. And that was not an option for me. So yeah, the wrong decision was the right decision, but like, I wasn't even aware of that at the time. So it's just going to be just keep moving forward in the direction that you feel like you should be going at the time. And I say feel like, because you don't know and you're not expected to know, but you just have to keep moving.
And then from that point on, the business went terrible. At some point, you cut the ties and you started the construction brokerage because you were still in that construction mind.
Yeah.
With 3 other guys.
Yeah, so two, Greg and Mario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then that went okay, but the problem you had there, that's what you told me, is that you both wanted separate ways.
Yeah, we both wanted to take the business in kind of different directions, and there was no like, both were right, all 3 of us were right, because there's no right or wrong. It's business, you can do whatever you want with it. But we kind of had different ideas as to, you know, how we wanted to do things. And so, and also my visa was coming to an end at a certain point as well. So eventually it became clear that, well, I had to leave the country at the start because my visa was up, but also it made sense to leave that venture, because I realized that after a certain point in time, there's no point us both, like, because I couldn't say that they're wrong and they couldn't tell me that, or either of those were wrong, because they could be right. But I also couldn't say that you're wrong because they could be right. And so that's the tricky thing, that you don't know at the start of a working relationship with, say, a business partner, which I know in hindsight now. It's very hard to understand how they want to go with the business over the what it's going to be like after 2-3 years or whatever, because you're just at the very start. And again, I was young, so I didn't know how to do this the right way.
What would you recommend, like, if you have a business partner, like I have a business partner, for example, but if you have a business partner, or if you start a partnership or whatsoever, what are the things you learned from that situation that you would recommend right now to look at firsthand?
So what I've seen works well for me and couple of people around me is start with low commitment and move into high commitment. So low commitment, let's say for example my clients, I have some clients that go into my program, and then there's some of them who are the best ones I work with long term. So it starts low commitment, and it's a nice test. And again, I did this with the consulting program that I'm on. I have a partner that I work with now. So it started as in like, we'll just launch this, see how it goes. Not even from the point of view of see how successful it'll be, because that's actually not the most important thing. It's how you are with the person and how you are with the work together with that person, if that makes sense. Because if the business could be going unbelievably, and you'll hear stories about this. Business starts going savage, but then the founders just hate each other. And that's not because they think they're personally not good people, because they obviously got on before. But they'll have certain ideas about how things should be done, and if they're not aligned, that's going to end up being like a bad marriage. So the way to combat that is to, like, if you're thinking of getting into business with someone, when I am thinking of getting into business with people, I try to expose myself to them in a low commitment way for a longer period of time, like 6 months. Because then when I'm meeting them, if I'm meeting them every week and I'm meeting them every 2 weeks, we'll either get closer and work better, or we'll stay the same, or we'll eventually drift apart. And that will happen naturally. So you should only really go into business with someone to, at the end of that 6 months, you don't really have any bad words to say about them. You like their ideas. You know that the skill sets mix well nicely together. But it's impossible to know that at the start, especially when you're a bit younger and you don't know what you're strong at as well. You know,
so actually see it like dating.
Yeah.
Start dating your business partner a bit up front, so you know what's there before signing any contracts or whatsoever. Just get to know the person and get to know, because that's also a really important point, I think. Someone in person can be amazing, but the same person as a business partner could be the worst ever. So that's why you say like...
And they're not related.
They're not related.
Completely impossible to tell. So it's like I think a lot of people, like what I did, it's like going on a date and then you're out for dinner. So, that dinner was nice, want to get married? You know what I mean? It's like you have a good idea and then you meet up for an hour about it and then you're like, let's just launch it. But like launching a business and actually trying with it is a big commitment if you're going 50-50 in it, like to make it work, because it takes quite a while to make something work properly. So that little jump in over, like, it could be lunch and then you have an idea, I was like, yeah, let's build it. Now I'm like super cautious with that. I'll still go and I'll do the meeting and be like, yeah, you know, this is sick, we should do this, that and the other and blah blah blah, but I won't commit to it, at least in a high commitment way. And I'll be very honest now. I'll be like, you know, I'll just be like, listen, I generally don't commit to projects until I'm, you know, have a bit of time to understand more about how it's going to work and stuff. That might cost me because maybe I'm going to miss out on a unicorn opportunity. But in my own experience, I try to just go low commitment into high commitment, and it tends to work better, because I found that, you know, you're introduced to so many people in business as well, and the ones that stick around are the ones that you gel with the best. So if they're the ones who you should go into business with, because they've stuck around for a reason. It's not like, you know, whether they were a client or a business partner, or, you know, you were in on a deal with them or something like that. After a while, that deal or client relationship isn't there, and they're still there for whatever reason. So you still talk to them, and they still talk to you. So there's an alignment there. They're the type of ones I would and have explore actually continuing and building upon.
I think that's a really interesting and valuable perspective as well, because this partnership that you had, that ended. Your visa was ended. You had no money, and you needed to go back to your parents.
Yeah.
So then you were there, 30 years old, with your now wife, but then girlfriend, at your parents' house.
Yeah, it's best time of my life.
What was going on in your mind when you were there? Because it's like, I don't want to go back to my parents.
I didn't have a choice. I had to. Like, I burned all my cash. I'd been borrowing money from my parents anyway, to like keep me afloat and pay some of the fees on this visa stuff that I was dealing with. So we had to go. There was no option. So ended the Australia thing and then moved back home. So I'm an only child, live in a country, like 5-bed house. My parents are so nice. My wife is obviously so nice. But living when you're 30 years old with your wife and your parents is a complete nightmare. So never do it if possible, because it's just, you know, my mom, I love her so much, but she still treats me like I'm 15 when I go home. So that's not going to be ideal for my wife either, because she's just another human who like is not her daughter, you know what I mean? So it's just a really hard dynamic to kind of deal with, and they were used to me not being in the house for a long period of time, and all of a sudden I'm there and I'm standing all over her toes making breakfast in the same place that she does. So that was a hard thing to deal with, but my parents were very supportive in that time as well, and that was just I needed that to give myself the, like, as I say, I was 30, I felt like such a failure. My mom cried one time because she was worried, you know, what am I doing? Because this was 2022, this was like, what was it, 4 or 5 years after quitting the construction job. And not even did I have nothing to show for it, I was behind. I had less money, way less money than when I left. So that was a massive low point for those 4 months. But then I also, it felt like I had done nothing, but now in hindsight, those were the most valuable years I could have had, because they were all the hard lessons, like, you know, about making the lady cry and stuff. And I obviously seemed to need to learn things the hard way in order for them to work. So like, I was left at home. There was a few things that I had done in the past that I wasn't going to do again. One of those was I had to work remotely now, because I was in Melbourne. This was all that was going on during COVID, and I was stuck there. Couldn't see my parents, and I'm an only child again, so I tried to go home every 6 to 8 weeks when I can. Wasn't able to do that. So my new thing had to be remote. No choice. That was a constraint that I set. Second one was I wanted to be fully making my own decisions, because I didn't want to work with anyone else. Probably again goes down to the only child stuff. I don't play well with business partners, so that's something to factor in. But I was like, I have to work for myself so that I can make my own decisions. And I also wanted to do something where I could earn personal money quicker, because the business that we were trying to build in Australia was like, it had 3 people, so it had 3 mouths to feed. So I had to earn a lot more in order to get paid. And while it's not all about money, you do have to get paid to some amount to actually live. And I was basically not getting paid for that time because we weren't profitable. I was getting paid like very sporadically. So then I was like, I'm going to do something where I can just earn money faster. There's probably another thing. I was like, everyone's like, oh, think the long game. And that makes sense sometimes, but you also have to think the short game. You have to think like, what's the realistic thing here that I can do so that I can put myself in a better position tomorrow and next week and next month. You know what I mean? If it's all a long game, you're just plowing plowing time into something that may or may not pay off. You know what I mean? And I think we're sold that about entrepreneurship and starting businesses or whatever, that you have to sink loads of time and then you'll get a big payout. You don't have to do that. Like I realized that I needed to think short, and it was like, I need to build my foundation here, because I had nothing at that time, bar what I had in my head and support of my family and my wife. So yeah, I was just on social media a lot. I can't say there was a big plan. I was like, I couldn't do construction anymore because like all construction is location based, so it had to be remote. It had to be something. So I was like, I was on Twitter a lot.
I think that's also, when it comes to cut your losses, that's the first point where you let go of a certain identity.
Yeah.
And I think I want to dive into that a bit deeper, because that's really important.
Yes.
Else you always will be bounded to the past, because that's what you said through the story so far the whole time. I was still in the construction mindset. But that was also the thing that brought you a lot of experience, but it was also the thing that holds you back a shit ton.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that gave me the start, because when you are an engineer, everyone's like, when they ask you what are you doing, it's like, oh, you're an engineer. Or they either sometimes say it directly, or at least think, oh, you must be smart. So that was like a good bonus when you're a young person, because you're like, oh, they think I'm smart. It helps, like, you know what I mean? And then I was getting paid well and whatever. But then when I changed for that transition period of time, I was still in the idea, like, this is what I know, so this is what I should do. But then it came to the point where hanging on to that was, again, costing me way more than what I'm missing out on going forward. So it's like, I had a hard stop with the visa again, where it was like, now you're changing country again. So the environmental change made it easier to make another switch, I suppose, in hindsight. But I had to cut my losses there again and be like, really put to bed the construction idea, because I suppose I started to put it to bed at the start of the journey in 2017, but that was like the final nail in the coffin. That coffin, it was like, okay, you have to just move on and do something else at this point, because it's not serving you anymore, because you've clearly came to the point where there's a certain direction you want to take your life, and couldn't find a path to make that fit.
So you can hold on to a certain personality as long as it serves you, but then have some proper reflecting done to see if it keeps on serving you. Because at a certain point, the construction mindset that you still had, the personality that you bounded yourself to, was only holding you back and not serving, but you only saw that a bit later, what made it harder to cut your losses.
Yeah, well, it was probably, rather than, maybe a better way to think about it would be, I was chipping away at that personality, and it took me multiple years to actually get rid of it. Do you know, because it sounds like one day, it wasn't as if one day I woke up and I'm giving that up and I'm doing this. But I suppose I started being like, chipping away at it from 2017, but then it came to the point where I was like, I'm hanging on to this here and it does not make sense. Just because I know it doesn't make it better.
And then 2022, that was your turnaround point. It ended in your worst moments ever, going back to your parents. But then at some point, you started to see new opportunities. You started to see new things because of Twitter, actually, right?
Yeah. So I was on Twitter a lot. I had like a pseudo name, Scheming Billy, because my nickname is Billy Goat. And I had made up a pseudo Twitter where I was just tweeting and stuff, like just business ideas or something. But I was following a lot of lead gen people because I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. So I followed a lot of lead gen people, and then I was like, I could just start doing this. Why not? Give it a try. Because everything I had tried before, it was, somehow related to construction or something like that, and it was not working, except for crypto, and that really didn't work. So I was like, what do I have to lose here at this point? I really have nothing to lose. I can't go any lower. So I said, I'm going to just start offering Twitter DMs as a done-for-you service on a performance base. And this ties back into the other thing. It was like, no one's going to pay me $2,000 a month or $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 a month to do something that I've never done before. But I need to do the thing because I need to make the next step. So I can either wait around and just pitch thousands of people to try and get them to pay me $3,000, or I can just pitch like 10 people and say, hey, if you pay me 500 quid, I'll do Twitter DMs for you on a performance basis, and you only pay me when a qualified person shows up to a call, and we get paid every 2 weeks. So I did that for one client, Jackson Blacklist. Shout out Jackson if you're watching. He was in Australia, funnily enough at the time. Paid me 500 quid, and I just logged into his Twitter and started booking calls with e-commerce brands. It went really well. And so, like, I was just no systems I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of sending the same message over and over again, but it was working. So I was like, this is sick. Got up to like 3,000 a month for a couple of months in a row. And then I started like posting about what I was doing, but obviously concealing the names and stuff. And so then people were coming inbound to me asking me, I'm terrible. I don't consider myself to be a good salesman. But then people were messaging me saying, hey, can we hop on a call? I want you to do this for me. And then I chat to them. It was like, okay, grand. So I got a couple of clients doing that. And then after the light bulb started to click a bit, so you could actually post the content for the clients, and then they'll get leads as well as the DMs. So I was like, right, that makes sense. So then I was like, I think I said to Jackson, he referred me to someone, another person in e-commerce, Mark. He was like, I was like, yeah, so I'll do content plus DMs on performance for you. Still on performance at this point, because I didn't have the backing, and it was good money for me because I had been earning nothing. So then I did that for a couple of months, and then I got an inbound from a guy in America, Bruce, legend.
And then, so that's before we dive into that, like you build a skill set through appointment setting, how to get inbound leads, and then you started ghostwriting. So that was that journey. But what did you actually do to get leads? Because that's where most people get stuck in general. Like, how do you do that? How do you talk? What do you do to get leads in general?
So a lot of people struggle with this, as I know from dealing with them full time. It really is two very simple things that people get completely wrong. You have to be selling something that people actually want, and you have to deliver the message of what you are selling to them in a way that they understand that it is the thing that they want. Okay, so like what I was doing was DMs. So people wanted leads. It's very easy to understand what that is. So it's like, I'll get you 10 book calls a month on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Okay, sweet, I want that thing. I think when a lot of people are trying to get leads, like say I've worked with a few website designers in the past as an example. They're like, I'll build you a new website, and then you just get no responses. But what happens is people is like, well, I don't need a website, because no business owner wakes up at 3 a.m. thinking, oh, I wish I need a new website. Like, it never happens. So rather than selling websites, they need to sell the thing that comes with the website. So better brand equity, higher conversions, more high quality clients who come online and see you as way better than all the bad looking performers in the market. So no matter what you're selling, like, cold outreach works really well if you're just able to clearly deliver the message in a way that the person will understand, okay, yeah, that's actually the thing that I need now.
Sell the outcome.
Sell the outcome, but also sell it in a way that they understand it.
How do you do that?
You have to understand who you're selling to, really. If you don't know who you're selling to, you can't do it. And a lot of people then, when they're trying to come up with value proposition for what they're doing, they get overwhelmed. It's like, oh, because I can do this and I can do that and I can sell this and I can sell it to them and this and that. You end up then being just so broad and being like, I sell websites. But and you don't even need to necessarily niche down to do this, but it's just more about focusing on serving a couple of different subgroups within who you're selling to really well. But if you're able to get, like, say for example, if I'm a lead gen agency, if I'm selling to mortgage brokers, so rather than saying, well, I call them up or email, it was like, hey, do you want 50 MQLs every month, or leads or whatever? He'd be like, no. Okay, well, do you want me to introduce you to 50 first-time home buyers who are just looking to get approval on their mortgage every month? Yeah, definitely. Give me that. Because you're speaking in the language that they understand. But again, if you're not able to speak specifically to a certain group of people, you're not able to be specific and use those types of words. Because if I'm trying to sell to mortgage brokers and e-commerce brands who want a website at the same time, my message is just getting diluted between the two. So it's really focus on actually knowing, who you're selling to and what they kind of want. Would be the high level version of it. We can get into a lot more detail on that, but that would be high level.
So keep it super simple, talk in the language of your client, and sell the outcome.
Yes.
And if you do those 3 things, if just write them on the top of your head or something, just put that somewhere, and then start writing from that perspective, leads will be a good outcome for the thing that you do.
You'll get leads, and then the next step is to prove that you're the person who can deliver the thing. So that, like, a message like that I can help you get 50, new home buyers in a month or whatever. That'll get you in the door. But then this is kind of where I realized the content to back it up is really what takes it to the next level, and the exposure that you get to that person through posting a lot and then them actually seeing it. So the difference between warm and cold leads is going to be massive in these cases, but you don't have to necessarily post all the time. But if you're able to, one, get in the door with a clear message and then have some content to back it up, like as in, like I say a case study, but it doesn't even have to be a case study if you don't have one. If you get a lead and you're chatting to them and you're about, let's say for example, if I'm selling websites to clothing based or skincare e-commerce brands, and they're selling homepages, so that's obviously really important too. So let's say I somehow managed to get on a meeting with them for next Tuesday. Ideally, I want to get on that call where they know the massive value that I can bring to their business. So the perfect thing for me to send them is a document or a video or something that explains how I'm going to build them a website that's going to massively increase their revenue next year. And they want to have seen that before I chat to them. So as a person who hadn't done sales before, I needed that crutch of them coming onto the call pretty hot, because I wasn't able to get them from a 2 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. So I would always make sure that I was preloading them with information, pre-selling them with a couple of case studies or examples, like really detailed examples that's very relevant to their case. It's like, I did this for another company like yours, and here's what we did, and here's why it worked really well, type thing. So there's getting the leads, but then kind of, if you're not massively strong at sales, you can preload the calls with information. So my theory on it was, I want to put my best pitch into this document that I send them, because I'm going to fuck the pitch up. So I need to make sure that
they're pre-pitched.
They're pre-pitched.
But when I'm analyzing funnels for my sales marketing consultancy job that I still have right now, I always say, because this is all in the client journey. The first part is traffic. So get your foot into the door to get the meeting. That's traffic. That's the first part of every marketing strategy. Yeah. Then you go into the client journey before they go to the offer. And there's also always one sentence that I keep in mind when it comes to a client journey. And that is, what type of information or emotion does my lead or client need to buy from me? And what you're saying resonates exactly with that sentence. And especially if you're not good at sales, like I am, but for most people, it's quite hard to be good at sales, because you just need to put in a lot of reps and understand a shit ton to become good at it. But if you set out a good client journey, you just
make it easier for yourself. Like I was so again, going back to, I had such emotional drive behind this. I had to make it work. So then I was obviously coming across as desperate on the calls. And then as soon as someone would say, oh, that's not for me or whatever, I kind of panic and I mess it up, So I felt like I had to just preload these calls with as much good information as possible, and it worked for me. One thing I would say though as well is, you don't want to let something like that get in the way of action, because sometimes I work with marketers mostly, and a lot of marketers hide behind marketing. So they're like, oh, just do more marketing, but that won't solve your sales problem. You need to do more sales in that case. So I say I preload them with information, but it doesn't need to be like a big, especially if I'm thinking in the earlier stages of the journey when someone's trying to figure this themselves out. If you get a lead, you should have just one document that has 1,000 words and maybe a video on it that you can send. When I was doing this, I didn't have a website. I think I might have had a card website at one stage. I had a document that I would send before that, and that was enough to get them on the call for me. So I don't want people to hear this and then think, oh, I need to go and build like a 12-step Russell Brunson funnel and that type of stuff. You can just think of the principles and do the minimum of this so that you can set yourself up at the most. And then when you see it working, then add more layers later on.
Action drives change.
Yeah, exactly. And you just optimize.
And then at some point, you did the ghostwriting, you knew how to get leads, you got leads for your clients through ghostwriting, appointment setting and everything. And then there was one client that changed everything for you.
Yeah, so Bruce, shout out Bruce. He probably won't watch this, I think he's gone off grid. But they had Bruce was the CEO of a company called Cleverly, who are like a big LinkedIn lead gen agency in America. He reached out on Twitter, inbounded me, and was like, hey man, your stuff is cool, can we hop on a chat? I was like, yeah, of course, sounds good. This was normal at this point. I was getting like quite a few leads because I built some nice authority. I was showing what I was doing, and it was in demand, so the leads were coming. But I was still doing the performance based at this point. So I was like, got on the call with him, playing it cool, like it was performance based. I eat what I kill and that sort of stuff. And then he was like, sounds good, but can you just do a retainer? And I was like, sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, okay. And he goes, okay, cool. So like, what kind of? We talked a bit, and he was like, well, what kind of results can I expect over like a month? I said, well, you have a pretty wide target market, so I could probably book you like 20 to 30 calls on average in a month. He was like, okay, how much do you charge? And I was like, 3K. just I had never thought about that before that moment, because he completely put it on me, because I had never thought that it wasn't something obviously knew what retainers were, but I was like, I had never even thought. I had built this persona around being performance based and being a legend and doing this and like all this type of stuff, and then I was like, right, yeah, 3K. He was like, okay, let me think about it, can you send me more details? And I was like, sent him like a document I was used to put together, like video proposals and stuff. I sent him the document, and he paid in like 6 hours, and my mind was blown. I was like, oh my god, because obviously like you do performance yourself, like the retainer is much better. When I say better, it's more stable and it's easier to.
It gives you more headspace.
Yeah, it gives you more headspace.
And at the beginning of the month, when you work performance based, you always like in hunting mode. You're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Let's go on. Yeah. Let's do it again. Like.
Yeah, I like now I know where. Like I spoke to him about it. I asked him because I was perplexed at the time, but eventually then I asked him. I was like, why did you want to do the retainer and not the performance? Because in theory it should be better to do the performance. And then he said basically, and this is a good mindset because into like how kind of bigger companies think. It was like, I don't want to be thinking about how many calls you're booking, and I don't want to be checking in and performance marking you. I just want to stand back, let this work for 3 months. If it's working as per the stats that you tell me, then we'll keep going. If it's not working, then we end it. But I don't want to be micromanaging you, basically. And that was a real insight for me. So he wanted to basically know that he could trust me on the call. And if he did, then he would pay a certain amount for that. They ended up being a client for like over 2 years until I moved towards the end of my ghostwriting time. So that was really good. I think Bruce is in India at the moment. But yeah, that was like a massive kind of change for me, and allowed me then. I eventually just moved towards doing all ghostwriting and all on retainer. And I was still in during this time as well. Gina started working full time, part time at the start because she was doing her masters, but then full time, and then we had a few clients. Yeah, and then we kind of get towards the next stages as well.
Yeah, because in 2023, you started your own consultancy business, the one that's thriving right now, while doing the ghostwriting.
Yeah. So this is probably another, if you think about it, another overlap. So like, started the ghostwriting in the middle of 2023. Yeah, 2023. Got that first retainer client in August of that year. Oh, sorry, no, 2022. It was 2022. And I was just doing that for about 14 months and then launched the consulting. Because I found that I found myself back to the point where I'm kind of doing something on a day-to-day basis that I'm not enjoying the boring bit of the business, really, I suppose. I was like, it was just really repetitive, and it's just writing all the time, so it gets boring, because you don't have any interaction with people or anything like that. So I met a fella, Luke, met him online, and then I was traveling all throughout the things I was describing there and moved to Liverpool. We met in person as well. And then he's worked on a few coaching programs doing operations, so he kind of, I don't know how intentional he was around it, but he was like, you should do this, man, we'd be sick and we could partner on it and everything. And this is an example, actually. I was chatting to him for a good couple of months before we kind of actually said, let's go, because I wanted to not jump in to something that I was going to be long-term committed to. And even our first agreement with that, it had an end date. So it wasn't just a rev share forever, because we do a rev share, but it had an end date, and I put it in for the reasons described earlier, as in like, I don't want to jump into this. We ended up continuing to work together, which is great. But I was still in that kind of mind zone at the time.
And then from that point on, the consultancy business started to develop. And then right now, fast forward a bit, you've set up a lot of systems, you set up the right strategies that it actually started working, and you had to let go of something again.
Yeah.
So beginning 2025, you cut the rope on the ghostwriting,
Yeah.
and now fully focus on your own consultancy business.
Yeah.
And there were two really important parts of that that we're going to dive into before we end, because I think our time in the studio is almost over.
Okay.
And then we get kicked out by angry people.
Yeah.
And that is systems and strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you dive into that?
Now, the system strategy now?
No.
Yeah. So a big part of what I suppose the whole journey is like, you can have all the systems in the world, but if you don't have the right strategy to point you in the right direction, it's a complete waste of time. So it's like, if you get into, it's like going somewhere and using Google Maps to get there. If you have the wrong end destination in, no matter how fast you drive on the road, you're going to be late because you're going to the wrong place. So like a big part of the work we do now with people, I work with marketers to help them get clients on LinkedIn. All these people are marketers, so they know how to do marketing, but a lot of times doctors are their own worst patient. So they although they know the systems, or although they have their own systems, they don't have a good strategy, and so they're not able to get any good results.
Define a good strategy, though.
A good strategy is one that attracts, in this case, a business strategy or marketing strategy is one that attracts the ideal clients in a predictable way. If it's marketing strategy, or it's a business growth strategy, so it's like, how am I going to bring in the type of clients that I need to get my business from A to B, wherever that is.
And this is quite broad, but if you go in a bit more specific, like how do you create such a strategy? How do you think of that?
So when the first step that when I'm working with someone is get clear and like start really simple and then kind of build into the detail from there. So I'll go through an example. So the first line that we would work on when I chat with someone is like, I do X for Y so they can Z. So it's like X is your service, for Y, so who's the ideal customer, and then the big benefit. So we'll drill into that. But like, it's not just like I do Google Ads for e-commerce brands so they can make money. It's like, we need to know at an extremely in-depth level who's the one person we're selling to, what are the KPIs that are actually keeping them in a job, what can we say to them that's going to be very interesting to them and make them want to engage with us, and how do we call them out? So like, what do we call those types of people? So I was on a meeting the last day with a person who is, I think there's we just keep going. Yeah, I was on a meeting with a person the last day who was selling like book a call funnels, and she's like, you know, maximize book meetings from websites, but her target market is like older sales directors. So I was like, you need to speak in the wording that they're going to say. You need to be like, okay, think about them getting up out of breakfast in the morning. What's the thing that's keeping them the most stressed? It's probably that they're doing a load of cold calls and no one's responding. So they need to book a call funnel so that when they cold call them, that they'll be able to actually convert more of those leads into actual sales. So then we worked that back and built our value proposition around that, and didn't use the terms that like maximize retention and opt-in percentages that she was thinking about. We changed it to be the things that they would understand that they were going to get. So it's like, we're going to give you a QR code business card so that when you're at your next conference, people are going to scan it, they're going to end up on a really good website that perfectly explains how you can help them, and then they're going to book a call. So you're going to make $1 million from your next conference.
And in that way you optimize their marketing strategy and their funnel through a system that you created.
Yes.
And I think this is the part we're going to kick out, or where we are going to be kicked out.
Yes.
So if people want to follow up with you, where should they go?
My LinkedIn, so Colin Gallagher. I'm the
Put everything in the description.
Yeah. So my LinkedIn, or just on our website, just have a look. There's a video on there, what we do. Yeah, one of those two. That'll be it.
And you also upload videos yourself, right? Where you give massive value.
Yeah, so I try and again, getting leads through content is not just about posting, it's about delivering the nuance and expertise in what you're doing in those videos so that people watch it and think like, geez, they really know what they're talking about. And then that's kind of how you turn content into clients. It's a very short way of saying it, but yeah.
And that's what you can find on
you
your
find
website?
it on our website and on my LinkedIn.
Okay, and now we get kicked out.
Yeah.
So visionaries, like, subscribe, all the crap, take action, and check you later. Ciao.
Thank you.